afternoon. I'm Nick Johnson, the publisher of Axios. Welcome to Women's Sports House. This is our second in a global tentpole series of events in partnership with Deep Blue Sports and Entertainment. Thank you all for joining us here on a slightly less warm day, I think, which is pretty nice, a good breeze. We're very grateful for you being here. We're also super grateful to our partners. They make everything we do at Axios possible, so huge thanks to Snap for making today happen. And so I'm very excited to welcome to the stage for a View from the Top conversation, Snap's Chief Creative Officer, Colleen DeCourcy, and Larissa May, Digital Wellbeing Pioneer and founder of Half the Story. How about we take the three in the middle? I'll give you that one. We'll just wing it. It's canned.
We also have the creative director here that can tell us where to
Directing us on where to sit.
Welcome to Women's Sports House. Let's start as we talk about social media with kind of the lived experience. So tell us how you personally use social media, and then I think how you balance living there and then not forgetting about the real world.
Yeah. I mean, listen, probably different for me. I would also say just like generationally different for me, right? And I think that's really important. But I did really come up through my career as someone who was very social media forward. That was what I brought to the table as a creative director. And so there is I've gone through phases of it. I think there was a period where I was just ecstatic about social media, and I used it a lot. I loved when people remember my birthday, which is a cliche, but like that was the age I was, right? That was like the time when it was starting.
Getting all those endorphins.
Given all those things. What I have found is that, and then I was having to post, when I was at Wieden & Kennedy for a long time, I felt like I had to post professionally and put that stuff there. When I retired, I cleansed everybody I didn't know from my Insta feed. And then it became really, it was pretty boring. And so then I did the opposite, and I use it for shopping and design. But I do tend to really prefer the one-to-one communications now because I get my media and content from other places that I feel I can rely on and have a better depth of experience from, and then I just chat.
And maybe that one-to-one conversation is what kind of keeps it more anchored in the real world.
Agreed.
That's how you live your life, is more individual-based and algorithmically meeting
shopping and one-to-ones.
Yeah, it's also kind of nice when you talk and someone talks back instead of just being talked at.
Yes.
Well, Larissa,
how do you
your journey then?
Yeah, well, first off, I just want to say that I don't really believe in the idea of tech-life balance. I believe in tech-life harmony, and the way that the world is moving and shaping, and especially for the next generation, there is no difference between their digital world and their physical world. They are living in a digital world, period. And I grew up of the generation in the social media era when I was in high school, and that's when Instagram and Facebook came along, and I was a young girl trying to understand who am I as a person and what role does technology play in that story. And quite frankly, the first way that I used social media was actually a tool for self-expression, and that is technology at its highest calling of human transcendence and tech coming together. And although it started there, I didn't have the emotional skills to thrive in the digital age because no one taught them to me. So I almost ended my own life in college because technology was really magnifying a lot of the things that I was experiencing, which forced me to understand what role is this going to play in our world. And so as a young person, now 10 years ago, I decided, hey, I got to start investigating this, and started an organization out of my dorm room, which started as an art project and telling stories on the internet to get to the crux of it. And now, after 10 years of learning from young people around the world and empowering them through creativity and play to thrive there, I've really found that technology is an extension of my creative voice and is of what I can share with the world, and I use it as such. And it's quite liberating when you go there with an intention to give as opposed to an intention to receive, and that's the wisdom that I hope to impart on the next generation.
So let's dig in a little bit to that, to what you've built around Social Media U, and sort of how you try and help people learn these lessons, maybe in an easier way. Like, what are the tips? What's the curriculum like?
Well, Half the Story was actually the first youth-centric nonprofit built to empower the next generation's relationship with technology, but also with the vision to make digital wellness accessible to everyone. We can't sit here in this room and disregard the role that technology plays in our human story. Digital wellness is wellness, especially when looking at the whole child. And so what we do at Half the Story is really two things. One is we empower young people as advocates in their own communities and to use social media. Actually, teens run our social media and they write all of our newsletters and tell stories to educate adults about the challenges that they're facing, but to empower other teens to put their phones down or to pick their phones up and tell a story that matters if they're going to pick their phone up at all. But secondly, we go into schools, after school programs all around the world. We're actually partnering with Girls Inc. and the Spirit of Girls to bring our programming to all of their girls, which is really rooted in the idea that digital wellness is our emotional resilience plus our digital habits. And we teach kids a couple of things. First, not all screen time is created equal, and that if you can actively engage technology, you can improve your outcomes in the digital world. The second is that technology is a magnifying glass for our emotions. As an anxious and depressed 20-year-old, putting technology on that was like putting gas in a fire and leading to an explosion. And it's not as simple enough to say that tech creates these things. It's actually much more nuanced than that.
What kind of feedback then you get when you try and go to young people and teach them these things?
Well, we get feedback long before it goes into a classroom. So my team's actually at a play test, and we call it a play test because, we're sitting in this era of moral panic right now about tech. And the antithesis of inspiration is apathy. And when we build and play and create with our kids and teach digital wellness as a game that you're a player in as opposed to a victim, it's fun. And that's how we build it. And the reason that 90% of our teenagers would refer a program to a friend is because they built it with us. They are my bosses. And I would argue they're probably your bosses too.
Well, yeah, let's get to the platform thing. So I think that's an interesting perspective from sort of the user. Snap as a platform, how do you view it from your seat?
Oh, well, I mean, there's the reason that I'm so happy to be up here with Larissa. I mean, it is, when we started Snapchat, it's been 12 years, and when the founders started, they actually started it as an antidote to social media. And easily said at this moment, but if you actually, there's a little blog post that I always pull up that Evan wrote when we first opened, and it basically said that he and Bobby were dissatisfied with the experience they saw on social media, that they wanted something that allowed you to be less perfect, to be your real self, to be funny, to be weird, to be whatever it was that you liked. And that is why the decision was made to always open on the camera first. Because when you open on a camera and you're looking out at the world, it's your viewpoint that's centered. It's not the world looking back at you, telling you what you should be like, what you have to live up to, what you should believe, what you should think. And so that fundamental difference, we talk a lot about design to be different, design for different outcomes. And that designing for different outcomes is true from the camera all the way through to how we prioritize content. Not having likes and rewards for performative actions, likes and shares on content between friends. It's just too much to have all of that stuff focused on any person, never mind about a younger community, which are really society's future. And we feel that it is damaging, and we feel that that is not the way we work. And so we continue now to focus the company on designing with an outcome which is to enhance real relationships between friends, family, and the world that they live in together. And we design for those outcomes, and we make trade-offs on our ad product to get there. And we have found brands and partners that are willing and happy to make that trade-off instead of continuing to frack a community.
There's an element of how Snap communicates with the audience publicly about this. Like, you've launched a campaign recently, not a social media company. Like, tell us how the thinking that goes into that and how that relates to this idea of increasing well-being.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, there's a lot of debate right now on whether or not people believe that. I think you and I are very much aligned in that you can pull up any evidence against that you want, but just look around and ask young people, and they will tell you what it does. And so that is what we're taking as our cue, as we always have. We design from community out. We started the campaign for two reasons. We want people to understand that we embrace this and believe that it's right, that they want something better. We believe that brands and partners need to step up. We do need to start making decisions, guys. This can't just be a floating topic forever. Is it, isn't it, good, bad? Like, where are you putting your money? What does it mean to you? What does your consumer mean to you? Because that conversation is the next one coming for us. And it's not going to go to your senators, it's going to go to you. And so that, I think, is very, very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think the bigger question here when we sit here with all of the advertising leaders in the world is, what is the opportunity cost of humanity? We have seen technology play out over the last 20 years, and we are now at a point, and this is why I'm sitting up here with you, because we know that by coming together to have these conversations, we can not only redesign the content that we're sharing with the world, but we can redesign the way that we measure our outcomes to account for the emotional support of our community. And in actually measuring that and managing that as an outcome is what is going to change this industry. Not just creating headlines that all tech is bad. While that's starting a conversation, the opportunity that we all have here and you all have here, and hopefully we can stick around and chat to you, is, how do we change those metrics from the inside out? Show the cost, the opportunity cost that we're taking in the same way that companies had to do for climate change to save humanity, because that's the level of seriousness that we're talking about when we come to this equation.
That. I'm going to go get a pen when I'm done with this and write down that phrase, opportunity cost for humanity. I mean, I think that kind of speaks to the size and scope of this as a problem. And then on that note, then Larissa, come on, as someone who thinks about this so intently as you, give a call to action. Like, what should folks in this room take away from this to be a force for good?
Yeah. Well, first things first is I would go back to your companies. And as I said, what gets measured gets managed, and what gets managed gets measured. Look at your KPIs. We are no longer at a point where we can just be looking at the success of our platforms by retention and the amount of dollars that we're driving through advertising, knowing that the largest generation and the generation with the most purchasing power, we're living at a point where the greatest wealth transfer in history is happening. How are you going to start measuring the emotional outcomes of your consumer? How are you also going to start adding agency into the platforms by allowing your consumers to reset the content that they're seeing based on the emotional state that they're seeing? We need to bring humanity into the metrics, into the design, and to co-create this with young people at the forefront, which is what Half the Story is going to do this summer. We're going to go into Snap with our teens. We're going to go into big tech giants and let teens speak to the leaders about the changes that they want to see.
I think that's great advice for this crowd. And let's bring this, before we wrap up, to the real world, to practice instead of just theory. Colleen, tell us how Snap is doing this. Like, how do these conversations be implemented?
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, the mission that we've placed ourselves on is the one that I told you, but what we do is we start from relationships, right? And then we constantly are gauging and working with our community. One of the biggest, when I came in, one of the biggest flares that said, oh God, this is what's happening, is that when we did research and conversations with our community during COVID, what we were hearing is, the connection with my closest friends is the thing that's keeping me hanging on right now, because I'm cut off. I'm at home in a home with my parents. I'm at a stage where I'm growing up to be my own person. I am separate from my family, and yet here I am in this house without any of my friends or anyone else. And Snap is the place where I can feel the closest replica to that feeling. And it's like, okay, if we keep listening, and we keep implementing. So I'll give an example, solar system. Don't know how many people have heard of that, but we had developed something that seemed fun, that you could tell at any given moment, like where you sat in a group, and we designed it, and people played with it, and even when we first launched it, everyone's like, I love this, I'm like, yay, we have a hit. And then you let a little amount of time go, and you find out that people are feeling bad because they're finding out that someone else doesn't see them as much of a friend as they see them, and people got confused and felt hurt, and so we took it out. And that's what you have to do.
And I also just want to add too, this is about coming together. Even we are working on a policy on cyberbullying in California, and I called their team and I said, hey, have you guys ever considered calling the tech companies and actually seeing if they would do this or if they already are doing this? And those are the moments of magic where we come together as opposed to just point fingers, because you can actually save dollars, you can save time, and you can create a lot more impact that way.
There's an element that you mentioned, Colleen. This is from the conversation we had in New York that I kept thinking of again, is when you talk about the friend connection, it's like the relationship with the person on the other side, not an algorithm on the other side. I mean, I feel like if we're going to take away one thing from this, it's like the digital well-being is maintaining that relationship to the real world through that. personal
Absolutely. And this is one of the reasons why you'll see us leaning into passion points right now: sport, music. I mean, for me personally, you know, I talked to you about a story of my own daughter's problems with community and social media in high school, and getting her into sport was what got her out of that and got her going. And to me, that was proof that that real world connection, that that was the thing that she needed to other people. I couldn't save her as much as her connection to her friends could.
You just hit the nail on the head that we have to start showing the next generation, not telling them, that there's a difference between connecting and human connection. And purpose, both digitally and in the real world, can save us.
That's such a great thing to end on. Thank you for being human connections for me in real
Thank
life.
you.
We're not being run by the algorithm here.
Not AI. We are not AI.
Real
We are not.
people. Thank you so much. Thanks to Snap for making today possible. And now I'm going to welcome to the stage the mayor of Cannes, Sarah Fisher.